Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Need a seconder, Josh? Second.
Okay. Anybody else interested? Or? I guess. Okay, I'll be glad to do it. Be glad to do it. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure. Yeah.
Make a motion for vice chair?
Yes, we do. We need to make a motion for vice chair.
Chuck O'Malley for vice chair.
Okay, thank you. We need a seconder, Josh, or do we?
Yes, please.
Sheila Quinn seconds the motion. Anybody else interested? Chuck, you'll get extra pay and the check's in the mail, so
Yes,
don't,
thank you.
Don't get too
Accept
excited.
the honor. Thank you.
Don't get too excited about it, okay? Thank you very much, and thanks, everyone, for being here. I think we can start. We've got a presentation to make this morning, and we'll do that right shortly, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Do you want to do it right now, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Acting Commander Alburn, thank you. You want to?
So thank you very much. Today we'd like to recognize, we're going to recognize the 2024 Auxiliary Member of the Year. Just some background, so the Auxiliary program is a completely volunteer program. These are people within our community. They come out, they're the unsung heroes within the O.P.P. a lot of times. They're out doing your parades, they're doing our food drives. They're doing the background work that you may not see. The only thing that really distinguishes them to the public eye would just be the color of their uniform. But really, they're completely volunteers. You know, they live in our communities. So this year we're, sorry, thanks, sir. I don't have to start over, do I?
No, I could.
Make that speech again.
Does that work now, Josh? Does that work? I have a team that takes care of this. Is that better?
If there's anyone listening online, they won't be able to hear you if you're not talking into the mic.
I have a huge online following. Is this going to affect my likes and stuff like that? If it does, Josh, please tell me. So just to reiterate, so today we're here to recognize the 2024 Auxiliary Member of the Year. This year it's Alan McGee. Specifically, again, to the program. The program's amazing. Locally, our program, it depends how you want to look at it, whether it's 4 or 5 years ago it was thriving. We had many members. Now our group is quite small, but I think it kind of speaks to the success of our program because many of the members are being hired. They're becoming full-time members. So in some ways, we treat our auxiliaries as our farm team. That's kind of our area to grow our membership and develop members that can then become full-time members within the O.P.P. So this year, we're recognizing Alan McGee. I can say I've known Alan for 5 years, at least 6 years. Probably my biggest memory of Alan would be that horrendous snowstorm that we had in, when was it, Brownie? 2020, remember the really bad snowstorm? So our platoon worked nights for that, and there was, now Sergeant Brown and I were on the platoon. There was 6 or 7 of us working, and we went that Friday, Saturday, Sunday night where basically the entire province was shut down, and every single night I was there. The platoon was there with 6 members, and that volunteer was there every single night, trudging through snow to get to people in cars, and not being paid, and up to his neck in snow, going and finding people that were stranded in cars. So Alan's definitely committed to the program. Beyond volunteering with the O.P.P., Alan's also the president of the local MAD chapter, and his work with MAD is unparalleled. We have the president of MAD Canada here today who's also going to present Alan with an additional award. But from the O.P.P's perspective, thank you, Alan, for all of your work that you do. I've personally seen the dedication and things you do for this community, and they're unreal. Last year, Alan put over 200 hours personally just in the community. He has over 200 community hours last year. And that doesn't go to all the other things that he does. He does administrative, he does training. That's 200 hours on the ground in our communities. That's our Christmas parades, our food drives. Like within the police report, you'll see that one page of the food drive. That's Alan in that. So just Alan, to call you up. I know the mayor would like to present you with something.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure, Alan, to meet you and also to have this opportunity. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for all you do. And as Commander O'Byrne has said, you're involved in all kinds of aspects of our city and of this area. And as you and I both know, the quieter the police work, the less I know, the better off I am, but this is a special occasion to get to know you and appreciate the work. I've worked Red Nose for the last, I don't know, quite a while, and it's still surprising why so many people think that they can and then get in the car and drive. So thank you very much for all you do, and congratulations. And this says, in recognition of an auxiliary member who makes significant contributions and demonstrates dedication to the O.P.P. auxiliary program, Auxiliary Constable Alan McGee. And it goes on to say how proud we are of you and so on. So I'll let you read that yourself, but I'll certainly give you a chance if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you. Can I hold off my word after
sure.
the MAD?
Yes, certainly.
Presentation?
Yes, certainly.
We'll do maybe
Yes.
this. Oh, watch mine.
We'll
Just
get.
one. Oh, right here, Mr. Mayor. We'll get around you, Mr. Mayor. Okay. All right, we're gonna put. So also today, Alan, from our regional command team, Superintendent Derek Needham and several members of the platoon wanted to come and just recognize and appreciate your service. So thanks very much. So on behalf of the detachment, I'd like to present Alan with the annual Auxiliary Recognition Award for being the auxiliary member of within Quinte West for 2024. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
And I'd like to call on the President of MAD Canada. Wherever the mayor and
Well, it's always nice to use a microphone. That one there works, or this one here, whatever works for you.
I can stand here if that's all right.
Okay.
put this down.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Al, and thanks for the members of the council to allow me to come here and be a part of your meeting today. My name's Steve Sullivan. I'm the CEO of MAD Canada. Our mission is to stop impaired driving and support victims and survivors of this violent crime. Today I'm here to also present Alan an award. This is the King's Coronation Medal. It is the commemorates the coronation of His Majesty King Charles III as King of Canada. It's being awarded to 30,000 Canadians across the country who've made a significant contribution to Canada or to their province, territory, region, or community. MAD Canada was fortunate to receive 50 of these medals to hand out to our staff and volunteers across the country, those who support our mission to stop impaired driving and support victims and survivors. As you can imagine, for an organization that's been around for almost 30 years, 50 medals is not really enough given the thousands of people who've contributed to our mission over the years. Our volunteers work across the country. They give of their weekends, they give of their evenings to attend chapter meetings or events on the weekend to raise awareness. They support their law enforcement partners by doing sobriety checks. So I want to thank all of our volunteers across the country. But obviously today we're here to celebrate one significant volunteer, Mr. Alan McGee. Alan started volunteering with the Quinte chapter in 2010. He is currently the chapter president and has been for a while, I think, fair to say. Sometimes he's been a one-man show, but also enjoys the support of many volunteers in the community who help with the mission as well. Alan's been integral in raising public awareness about the risks of impaired driving, building community partnerships to help get that message out. Through lawn sign campaigns, safe boating signs at marinas. He developed a service coin for first responders. He's worked on an I Pledge campaign at the Loyalist College and obviously has worked with law enforcement. I know him and his volunteers do a lot of sobriety checks, sometimes in the very, very cold weather, supporting our law enforcement partners and also thanking those drivers who were driving sober and made the right choice. Alan's an active volunteer, raises awareness about the risks of impaired driving, which we believe helps to save lives and prevent injuries. He partners with law enforcement and makes sure that they understand that MAD Canada appreciates all the work they do in the communities, first responders, and he also makes sure that local victims and survivors who need support have access to that support by working with our national staff. So it's my honor today to present the King's Coronation Medal to Alan McGee. Thank you.
We're just gonna do that. Just gonna get a family photo.
Oh, okay.
Wife up here to get the photo. Keeps just standing for you.
You don't want me in
Get
it?
in
Oh,
there.
my goodness.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? Apologize my back being to everyone. Um, Maybe, or sideways. Okay, everyone good? Hear me? Okay. So good morning. I'd like to I'd like to say thank you to the O.P.P Acting Inspector, O'Byrne, for the Auxiliary of the Year Award, and to Steve Sullivan from Mad Canada for nominating me and presenting the King Charles III Coronation Medal. And special thank you to my wife, Sarah, for all her support. And thank you for everyone who attended today. So success comes to people around us. Our achievements and our accomplishments are largely influenced by the people we surround ourselves with, including family, friends, mentors, and colleagues, who can provide support, guidance, inspiration, and collaboration, ultimately contributing to our success. Essentially, our network plays a significant role in shaping our achievements. Thank you.
Played every day. So just congratulations and keep up the great work.
It's just an honor to be in your presence. Thanks again for all your work you do in our community.
The stat that kind of jumped out at me was the 200 hours, and that's quite impressive when you think of some high school students that struggle to complete 40 hours in 4 years. So, and I know we've seen you here before, so this isn't your first time in front of this board that you've had an achievement to recognize and to celebrate. So be proud of yourself, and your family should be as well.
Thank you so much for supporting everyone in Quinte West with your guidance, because a lot of the times the volunteers, they are the unsung heroes. So they don't, nobody sees what the impact that they do in the community. So thank you for everything that you've done, and congratulations.
I guess I'm the echo for all that's been said, but I really sincerely feel that the measurement of a person is how much they volunteer. Job's one thing and volunteering is another. And you're a true example of one of the best. So congratulations to you and all the best in the future.
Thank you very much, and I'd like everybody to know I have had the privilege of working with a couple of other people and driving Red Nose. And the two other guys with me one night we went through a ride check, and they made a comment, "We're good, but watch the guy behind me. Watch the guy behind us." That was me. I'll tell you, they searched my car. They looked everywhere. So when you go through a ride program, I guess it doesn't matter what it is. Don't make any kind of jokes, because they are there doing a job, and they're doing it well, and they're very, very serious about what they're doing. So, Al, you've been a great part of an organization that's working to support all of us in a way that makes us better humans. So thank you very much. And I can tell you, from my point of view, and all of us here, you got the best detachment to work in there is in Ontario, right here. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody disagree? We'll talk to you later. Thank you. Yes, and we've got some distinguished people here this morning that I want Detachment Commander O'Byrne to just take a minute and say a few words, and then we'll keep going here.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I'd just like to recognize from our regional command team, we have Superintendent Derek Needham, who's in charge of operations, and he made the trip today specifically just to see Alan. But Superintendent Needham's portfolio includes the supervision and support of the Quinte West Detachment, so he would be my boss. So he directly oversees and supports everything that we do here.
That's
and
great.
then as well, Staff Sergeant John Viss. So John is, so everybody knows Jeremy Doolin. Jeremy's our operations manager at the detachment. So John is currently, he is a platoon sergeant, more than 20 years. He spent the majority of it here in Quinte. So John is currently doing the operations role of the detachment. And then as I'm filling in for Inspector Reeve right now, who's returning on the 16th of February. So John and I are kind of an acting team right now. We're taking gigs if anybody's got anything they need, so that's us. And then also just to recognize in the crowd, Sergeant Andrew Brown, who's recently promoted. He's a detachment supervisor. Andrew's been here for his entire career. He's now been given the trust of leading, and he's brought platoon members, 2 of our fairly new members to here to support, and then obviously family and friends.
I've been with my wife for a long time. In fact, my wife was Chuck O'Malley's babysitter. Yeah. Anyways, all I'm saying is that a big part of your life is your support, and that support is what carries us often to work and back home again, and realize just how valuable everybody is in our lives. So thanks for being here today, all your family, and it's great to be a part of this. And I have also spoken with our regional commander and indicated to him that we're really very pleased to have our detachment commander acting Constable O'Byrne, and our recommendation is very simple. Let's keep them.
Keep both.
Yeah, that's right. I know the O.P.P has a book. Yes, I went through that book when we built the detachment. And I can tell you, from my point of view, there's pages in that book that need to be removed. And but anyways, we won't get into that. I appreciate the work you do, and it's a great organization. And we can't fill the shoes of Inspector Reeve, but we can fill her position. But she's been just a trophy for us and a jewel for the O.P.P. And I would likely predict that her future will be great, and I'm sure that she will continue to serve in some capacity. So thanks for all the good work that she's done for us. And we're going to have something at the Marina April what, Yvonne?
May 2nd.
May 2nd. Okay, well, I was close. May 2nd. Well, thank you very much, folks. That's we'll go ahead and continue on. Yes, we're all invited. May the 2nd. Thank you. Okay. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? If anybody wants to leave, you go right ahead. You don't have to stay. You're welcome to stay, but you don't have to. So, any disclosures?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Declare that closed. Approval of the agenda, February 3rd, 2025, Detachment Board meeting. Resolution that the agenda for the February 3rd, 2025 Quinte West O.P.P. Detachment Board meeting be approved. Moved by by Member O'Malley and seconded by Member Reed. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Thank you very much. Carried. Next is approval of the minutes. Quinte West O.P.P. Detachment Board meeting held October 1st be approved. Moved Chuck, second by
Ken.
Jen, thank you. Thanks for helping me. Jen,
That's okay.
any comments or questions? All in favor? Carried, thank you. All right, delegations, we have Detachment Commander O'Byrne's going to give us a few comments, and then Steve Sullivan, is he going to stick with us, or is he's already left? So I guess he's done his part. Okay. Commander O'Byrne, you're on.
Thank you, Your Worship. So what I'd just like to do is I provided the board, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to come before you today. You were provided with two reports. The first was the Q4 for 2024. I prefer to just focus on the annual report. I think it encompasses everything, and I think it's a better picture. So the report, just so you understand how the report, so this report is an initial report. Right now, the statistics and everything are still being collected, so you will receive another final report. But I think it's important to come before you today just to at least paint the initial picture. To summarize it in short, I would just tell you that you have a safe community, first and foremost. And there obviously are areas that we are going to focus on for improvement. What you'll see in the report is one thing that we're going to really focus on, and something that regionally we're looking at, is our traffic safety. We certainly have a concerning trend within our traffic safety. I'll speak to last year. I'll give you some indication of where we're going, and then I'll have Staff Sergeant Viss just give you some insight into what we're doing regionally, because there's a regional plan, because within the eastern part of the province we've recognized that fatals, that's really one of our higher measures of where we look at to our accountability, and it is a concerning trend within the eastern part of the province. So our regional command team has a strategy that I'll get John to explain to you. So just to get into the actual report, what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is just go basically page by page instead of just kind of, it's not really opinions, but I'll just give you kind of what I thought when I looked at the report. And then certainly I would just engage in a conversation. If you have questions or concerns about anything in particular, then we certainly can discuss it. So the first thing, actually, the O.P.P. has been celebrating this year is 50 years of women in policing, which has been a huge benchmark for us. 50 years ago, the first female officers entered into becoming full-time members. So the O.P.P. has been recognizing that and celebrating that all year. And we happen to be very fortunate that we have the Detachment Commander of the Year last year, Inspector Reeve. So I tried to, when I looked at the report, these were kind of the 5 areas that really jumped out at me and that's on the first full color page. The almost 7,000 calls for service. 7,000 calls, and that's a massive number for a young detachment in this size of an area in the population that we serve. That is a significant workload. Some of the highlights that I saw was a 31% increase in our traffic charges, and that I'll speak to why, kind of where that came from. Impaired drivers, 153. Our property crime down 16%, and that's a trend we like to see for sure. A recurring thread you'll see in a lot, and it's come to light in my profession for well over a decade now, is the mental health. We're still in excess of 600 calls for service. And those are just calls that we clearly define as mental health. I couldn't put a number to it, but I would suggest to you a significant number of events that we attend in our community, there will be some substance of mental health in it. And there's people that, and it's not a stigma, it's not a label, it's a reality in our community now. And we have amazing folks. Policing as a profession finally matured, over a decade ago, and recognized the fact that we needed partners. And we have amazing partners in our community with Quinte Healthcare, our impact team, and I'll have John speak to what we're doing to support those members of our community that are struggling or in crisis. And then finally, again, a quantifiable. I like numbers. Sometimes I think numbers aren't always the only measure, but I think they're an important measure, and they can sometimes indicate trends. So over 1,700 criminal charges were sought by the detachment. So then the next page just kind of gives you just some highlights. There's a unit that sometimes doesn't get we don't like to necessarily give them they don't like a lot of focus, is what's called our community street crime unit. So we call them CSCU. They're what people commonly call our drug unit. Their portfolio encompasses controlled substances within our community as well as property crime. So that unit is their officers right here that are part of our detachment, and that just gives you kind of an overview of what they did last year. 728 grams of cocaine seized, 50 grams of fentanyl, 65 grams of crystal methamphetamine, 13 grams of MDMA, over 800 opioid pills, and over 1,300 amphetamine pills were taken out of our community. And those are all, they're stats. I see them as successes because those were possibly lives saved. Because one of the things we'll discuss is the opioid overdose in our community and how that impacts us. And then the next is the community events, and that's Alan on the right. But I know that you move through the community, and the community impact that this detachment has is amazing. We're very fortunate here. We have a very young detachment, and they are, if the biggest problem we have is kind of getting on the reins to keep us reined back. But those two young officers you saw sitting here, one has been here for 3 months and one has just been here 10 months. But they both live in the community and they asked to come here. So that just kind of highlights some of the events that you've seen us in the community.
Keep going.
Okay, excellent. All right, so I would go to the first, and I'll just start going through the actual report itself. We'll start on kind of a heavy note. We'll speak about our collisions. So as I kind of alluded to at the start, one concerning trend we certainly have is our fatal collisions. We don't need much of a reminder than even just the one we just saw a couple weeks ago on Highway 2 right near the base where there was 2 souls lost. It's a stark reminder, and so what I can say is last year you would see that it reports a 200% increase with a total of 6 incidents. Those 6 fatal collisions took 9 lives total from our community. I can tell you that locally what the detachment did in response is I'll talk to, there's generally in my experience, there's 3 causations to generally in a fatal. It's usually speed, restraint, so seatbelts, or substance. Those aren't the only 3, but in my career that's kind of been the causation or can usually be linked to that. And I can tell you that in all 3 of those areas, as we go through this report, you'll see that the detachment did recognize that there was an increase in these collisions, and they did respond. But we can still do more. We still lost 9 lives in our community. So I can tell you regionally, there is a strategy that our East Region Command, led by Superintendent Needham, has put forward. And I'll ask John Viss just to speak about what, this isn't talking about last year. I just want to tell you that we recognize there's an issue, and these are the steps we're going to take. Is that okay, Your Worship, if we just kind of give you some insight into what we're doing? It's not enough, I think, just to come to you and say, we had a problem last year. I think we need to tell you what we're going to do about it. So just ask John or Acting Sergeant Viss just to speak to what the regional plan is and what we're going to do locally to address and speak to those fatals.
Good morning, Your Worship, board members. Again, to echo Al's sentiments, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to speak here today. So, to Al's point, last week we met with the regional traffic team, and essentially as a result of the influx of fatal motor vehicle collisions over the last 12 months, I would say, a member from each detachment's been tasked with creating a local plan to focus in on traffic safety. And what I've done myself is basically run the analytics, and I was able to pinpoint exactly where our fatal collisions were over the last 10 years. And I think although our traffic enforcement year over year has increased, and I'll go through that real quick here, we focus in on the big 4, the O.P.P call the big 4, which includes speeding, seatbelts, distracted driving, and impaired driving. So from 2023 to 2024, our speeding enforcement was up 35%, seatbelts were up 49%, distracted driving was up 27%. The impaireds were down 27%. We went from 210 impaireds in 2023 to 153 last year. And I don't think that's an indication of us not out doing the work. We're out doing the rides. But at the end of the day, in looking at the stats, I think we can do a better job at employing our people to specific areas of need based on the stats that we've received regarding the location of our fatal collisions and our serious PI, personal injury collisions. So I think that's going to be our main focus, is really deploying our people where the greatest need is. The work's being done, again, just pointing our people in the right direction. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Just to also, I'm sure the board's aware that within the Quinte West Detachment, outside of our actual detachment core that is part of our contract to be here, we have what's called our Highway Safety Division. So that's a regional team that's deployed here. There's 4 members that work here that work above and beyond what the city as part of our complement. And that's placed here by our regional command team to support us at this end of, because we're the very western part of East Region. And I can say, so to John's plan, this past weekend, so the platoon that worked, they wrote they went out and targeted exactly the things that John's talking about, and they wrote in one day, working with these highway safety members, they wrote over 35 tickets. You would have seen in the paper that they captured a driver from Toronto traveling in excess of 45 kilometers an hour on the 401, and they took one impaired driver off the road, as well as took a 12-hour or a 3-day suspension, what we would call a 12-hour, the old 12-hour, took a driver off the road. So that was in one day, working in collaboration with our regional traffic folks. And we get that here as a detachment above and beyond the regular policing. So those 4 officers work here, and we really benefit from them, and that's all going toward our road safety. So I'd just like to move on now, go to the next. So those 2 pages just speak to the fatalities. Did anyone have any questions or comments on? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just one question. I think in the past, we've also discussed the use of technology. Is that on the radar in terms of technology monitoring cameras you're starting to see in other cities as an assist to you folks, all your work you're doing? Is that still planning to move ahead, or is it a city issue, or what's the status of that?
Through the mayor. Yes, sir. I mean, obviously, Quinte West is blessed to have our CCT system here is outstanding. We absolutely use that in all levels of our investigations. With specific to this, I think the technology that is more prevalent and that we're seeing is, so now there's training that's mandatory for all our officers on what's called field sobriety. So it's what you see more commonly on TV, you'll see officers doing these tests. Basically, it's physical tests. So it's now required within the O.P.P that all of our officers coming from our school have to have this test. It's mandatory. And all the officers that don't have it now, John's been working tirelessly to get all of our members trained. And what this is to recognize these signs of impairment. Because the days when I did it, it was alcohol. Now there's a tremendous amount of drug impairment. And that could be prescription medication or non-prescription medication. So to your point, sir, there is technology, but we're putting the technology in the skills of our folks more, really. But absolutely, to your point, I mean, the camera system and a lot of the stuff that's supported, that's owned by the city and supported to the detachment is second to none. And I've traveled East Region, and we have the best CCTV system, in my opinion. The other thing to the point of impairment is we are just now training on the brand new intoxilizer system. So there's a new and improved system for measuring levels of alcohol in drivers. We have a new instrument. We already have 7 officers trained here in Quinte. We're going to be receiving the new instrument very soon. And the other thing that's excellent is the O.P.P. Purchased and has deployed our in-car cameras system. So now we have the ability to put license plates of interest into that. So if we have something, a specific car we're looking for, we can put that license plate in, and then you may drive by it and not even realize it, but the camera system will tell you, you just passed that car of interest. So there's a tremendous amount of technology out there, sir. Absolutely.
Just on that, I was that's great, because there's 2 forms of technology and on some of the top 4 issues that you mentioned. In terms of the sort of speed and the prolific addresses that we have in our community, for cameras to slow folks down, that you can't be there at every time, but you see them, I think 5 in Belleville now, and as we drive back and forth from one community to the other, we kind of notice it. You go, oh, and it kind of does slow you down. And I just wondered if that particular use of cameras for speeding at prolific addresses that we've identified, and I think we all can highlight the areas in the city that get abuse in terms of speeding and so forth. So
we don't have photo. If you're talking about photo radar, sir, no, we don't have it here, obviously.
No, he's just talking about the sign that flashes.
Oh, I was going to say, we do have the speeds, so yes. We do have measures, absolutely, sir. So thank you very much to that point. So we kind of have 2 tools that we use. We have one that we use to collect information. So it's a device, it's a radar device that has you wouldn't even know it's there. We can mount it on a pole. So how we deploy it is that if we have a community need where someone identifies, it could be even, we work with your roads department as well. The roads department may say, we're doing an engineering, look at that road. Can you look at that speed zone? Can you look at what's the traffic patterns there?
Yep.
So we work in concert with the CCTV because they can tell us numbers. We also deploy this tool that you wouldn't even know it's there, and it'll collect data for as long as we want, and then we can provide either roads or, in our planning to say if we have a problem in an area, then we can look at hard analytics. It'll tell us minute by minute what volume of traffic went through, what the average speeds were, traffic, it can even tell us the size of traffic, whether it's commercial traffic or otherwise. And then the final, so that's more collection, it's not an enforcement point. And then the final piece, and the city has purchased them, is the speed signs. And what the beauty of those is that there's two kinds of way of addressing behavior. There's what's called specific deterrence, which is I hand somebody a ticket. That's specific. You get a ticket, I'm trying to affect your behavior. Then there's what's called general deterrence, which is community impact. And the way we get that is by putting those speed signs out that the city bought. And so what we do is after we either address a community need where someone says, the speeds on Water Street are getting up, we want to impact that, we can put out a sign that says your speed is. And that impacts general deterrence. So when somebody's driving along, they're already thinking about, I got to get bananas, I got to get milk, and go, oh my gosh, I'm going 70, and the sign is flashing. So to your point, sir, absolutely. I'm sorry I missed that point, but yeah. Yep.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay.
Keep going.
So we will move along then. So that's our traffic piece. So the next report speaks to criminal code and provincial statute charges. When I looked at this, so this is talking about the one that drew my attention. You'll see all the areas are trending down. As John highlighted, you'd see that Highway Traffic Act. So those are tickets, and that's up 31%. And that's a reflection of the detachment's response to recognizing that there was a need for more traffic enforcement. So our enforcement was up over 4,500 provincial offenses issued for highway traffic offenses. That's a lot. The one below that grabbed my eye was 30% a decrease in Liquor License Act. And when I looked at, so those are tickets for things that are not driving related, but people consuming alcohol. And where I looked to that, why is that down? So I looked into that, and what I identified was that our platoons have increased their bar checks. So our officers are on foot, and they're going into our drinking establishments. And that is what we speak, remember I spoke to specific deterrence, which is giving somebody a ticket. General deterrence is that police presence. So by our officers getting into our bars more, I noticed a significant increase in our bar checks. That resulted in 30% decrease in people committing liquor license offenses in our community. So that's a good trend. That's a good stat when I saw that one. And that's where that came from. Or that's what I would attribute it to. As John highlighted, a 31% increase in our actual tickets. Moving down to the bottom portion where it says traffic-related charges. As I said, so John highlighted also the what we call the big four. When we see fatalities, we look for those four pieces. And you'll see that there's an increase of 50% in our seatbelt enforcement. And that was that's the detachment commander and the operations manager recognizing there was 2 blitzes conducted along the 401 corridor and also within Quinte, and that resulted in 264 total over the course of the year seatbelts. Those are people not wearing their seatbelt in our community. And then you would see the other trend that I really like to see was that decrease in impaired driving by 27%. And I attribute that to visibility. That's that general deterrence piece. That's the MAD, that's the ride, that's education, that's all those pieces. Any question kind of on that tail piece of traffic? Yes, sir.
Thank you. And that's what stuck out to me at the Q4 report. You hope that no one drives impaired or speeds, but the seatbelt one stuck out the most. I didn't know if that was because you're targeting that, or that many people are that complacent. I wouldn't think anyone would stop wearing their seatbelt nowadays.
It shocks me every single day, sir, that people don't wear it in this day and age. And you're 100% right, but that is as a result of what we call directed patrol. So that's where we targeted an issue within our community. So if we have mischief in a certain area, then we will target that. This was in response to the fatalities. And that's why you see that. That is a concerning rise, that, and not from a policing perspective, but from a public education piece, that we can still go out and find 264 people not wearing their seatbelts. Like, that's concerning.
Well, and I don't disagree with you. It's a shock for all of us because, when did we start with mandatory seatbelt? How many years ago? My goodness.
Well, I'm 53, sir, and I've been wearing it my whole life, so.
Okay, well, I'm a little younger and I've been wearing it too, so that's good, yeah. I agree with you, but it's a shock that people don't know enough to put them on. And it's proven that saves lives. That's what it does. So, yeah. And the other aspect I'll mention, which is I think fantastic, is the training programs, the training opportunities that O.P.P have, and that I know many of your members are taking part in, because it was either a Thursday or a Friday night I was going to the hockey game, and I went through by the station and just drove in, and Austin Pike was just walking or getting out of his car going. They were going out that night. It must have been Thursday night, because he had just spent 2 weeks in Ottawa training, as you mentioned, with respect to the new equipment for testing and checking for impaired driving.
Absolutely.
So and I don't know how many were there with him, but 2 weeks of training and a number of other officers with him as well, and he came back from the training and was going on a shift that night. So
Yes, sir.
That's the kind of work that you're providing, that the O.P.P are providing to our officers, which is fantastic. Yes, I think I know it is fantastic. So, any other comments or questions from anybody? Okay, keep going. Thank you.
All right, to move on now to the next page, which speaks to warnings. So the O.P.P just started not too long ago, starting to track warnings. So when we stop someone for a traffic offense, or any provincial offense for that matter, we have the ability now. We've always had, the officers always have discretion. So whether they wish to issue a ticket or not is to them. The difference is within the warning system is that now we're tracking behavior, because the intent of enforcement is a change of behavior. We want to change behavior to increase our road safety. Now we have the ability to monitor if someone has in fact been afforded that warning in the past. So to this stat is not, it's not as good a representation, because we haven't had the time to collect the stats. It's a fairly new process we've begun. But the intent of giving warning, because sometimes people wonder, well, why would you warn when sometimes people just need to be charged? And again, that speaks to the discretion piece, but oftentimes you'll see an officer will issue an offense notice for a specific offense and then give the driver 2 other pieces of paper. And the benefit of the paper is that in this day and age, people see bottom lines. And the warning will say warning on it, and there's no recourse to the individual, but it shows you that bottom line that could have cost you, $210 more or whatever. And that's specific deterrence, again, going back to that changing the mentality. So this reflects, although there was 1,600 warnings issued within the community, so that's in addition to whatever we spoke to, the number of tickets, the 7,000 tickets or something, there was 1,600 other warnings issued to the community. And again, the intent there is is twofold. One, it's that specific deterrence, telling that person it could have been much more, and here's the potential financial impact on your family. And secondly, it then documents a history for us that in the future, if a person says, no, I've never ever done this before, I've never sped, I've never, I always wear my seatbelt or whatever, the officer has the ability, when they type in the name, it comes up and goes, Mr. Smith has been warned 3 times for his seatbelt or whatever. So we have that ability now. Is there any questions on the warning system? Okay. I'll get moving along here. I realize I talk too much. I apologize. All right, so we'll go into crimes of violence. The trend, nothing jumped out at me other than there appears to be, and I think it would be it's society in general. There's an increasing trend in violence within our community. I still believe that Quinte is a safe community, but there certainly is. If you look at other in the top where it says violent crime, the one I noticed was a 24% increase, and it says other offenses involving violence. So there is an uptick for sure, as far as 20%. And in looking at those, there's thousands of occurrences. In looking at those, I would just say I don't think there's a specific to this region. Having again, I work in my home locations within Lennox and Addington, and they're seeing a similar trend. I think just society is just headed that direction currently. But to support that, though, the benefit is, and what I'll get into near the end of the report, is our victim supports and our victim services that the city pays for specifically. You pay specifically to have a victim service person embedded within our detachment, and I will speak to the results of that later. So although we will always have victims of crime in our community, that's just the way things are. But how we support them and how we investigate and how we deal with that is what's most important. And when we get into clearance rates, you'll see that the clearance rate for crimes of violence is where it should be and where it needs to be. Any questions specifically to violence? Okay. The next page speaks to property crime. So as I highlighted, overall what we saw is a very positive trend. It's a 16% decrease in property crime, which is where we want to see it. That's where we want to see. And when we talk about property crime, that's not to oversimplify it, but that could be as simple as a shoplift of a chocolate bar right up to, theft of significant value. But just seeing the fact that it's trending down, that's good, because the impact of property. I mean, crime against person is always much more impactful. It has intangible and unmeasurable impacts on our community, but property crime has a lot of times has bottom line impacts, which then impacts people's ability to provide for their families and insurance and all the other things that kind of flow from that. But we've seen a steady, if you look for the overall trend has been down, which is good. Saw a bit of a rise there in 2023, but certainly we've been trending down overall. So I'm happy. And a lot of that goes to reporting is a very important piece. Oftentimes, a very frustrating thing for policing is people say, oh, my shed got gone through and something was taken and I just didn't report it because I left it unlocked, it's my fault, or cars, that type of thing. Reporting to us is so important because if we don't know what's out there, we can't combat it. So I think reporting's up, which is good. And I think the trend that we're on right now speaks to the quality of our investigations, the reporting, the community partnerships, and just doing a good job. The officers are doing a good job and they're solving crime. The one thing that also I'll speak to is frauds. Just driving yesterday, I got it was yesterday, I got 2 phone calls on my phone. One to clean my ducts, and one because I had a parcel at Postal Canada Post that was being held. Frauds are a tremendous social issue right now, and we are primarily our vulnerable communities being targeted in it, and they are victims. The approach the O.P.P has taken is more of an education piece. Unfortunately, I don't know, and I don't know that the O.P.P's managed to policing in general hasn't been able to wrap their head around how to address this, because a lot of the suspects and the agencies that are doing this are offshore. They're very technologically advanced, and they move quickly. So the time it takes and the requirements, the judicial requirements on us to manage to track these folks they move faster than we can track them in a lot of cases. So the way we're combating that is through our education. So you're seeing those lectures within the Lions clubs, and we're reaching out to our vulnerable communities and talking to them about information security and who we share information with and how we conduct ourselves online. So that's really an important piece that we need to keep partnering within the community. Any questions on property crime? Yes, sir.
I'm the senior fraud guy, I guess, on the board. I must be an easy-looking victim or something, I don't know what. But anyway, I just fully endorse what you're saying about the educational role that you're doing and the training and so on, and especially to try to catch the people that try to get the most vulnerable people involved. And I've got 3 on my phone now that are, I suspect, of that. So anyway, the numbers seem to be down there, but I suspect there's not as many people that are phoning about it to get information because they're slightly embarrassed by it and so on. So anyway, keep up the good work there. I think that's necessary, and it's going to become even more necessary in the future. So good.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Just one more. I'd like to acknowledge what Ted is saying, but the flexibility of the detachment with folks like Nick and John who are visible in the community. If you mention something to them about and how their ability to contact that person, say, yeah, we will contact them and make a presentation and increase that awareness and it through education, because all change starts with awareness. So thank you for all the good work you guys are doing and the flexibility to make that part of it work. So I think you're right on with that. We just gotta, be flexible because there's a new one every day.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you.
And maybe the use of the telephone. And I know you're not supposed to touch it if you're driving and so on, but many of us use that telephone as a source of direction. In other words, I'm leaving here and I'm headed to Belleville for a meeting, and I may want to check and make sure I've got the right address in my head, and so I look at the phone. But legally, I'm supposed to really pull off, stop, and so on, or what am I, or?
So the legislation, sir, is, what I would cover that in twofold. If the intent, I think, first of all, let's look at the intent of the law. The intent of the law is to ensure that we're paying attention to what we're doing. We're driving. That is our primary task. Any form of distraction within the car takes you away from that. So the intent of the law is to make sure that your focus as a driver is on the road. The specifics of the law speak to that you cannot have the device in your hand. All right, so if you're, just for instance, I see a lot of people that have their phone in a mount that attaches to their air vent or something, and they're using that, be it for navigation or their music or whatever. If your attention goes to that, to look at it and update your address, or if you're, move your map, just type thing to move to the next part of it, or to skip a song, say for instance, that's fine because it's mounted, it's not in your hand, and your distraction is limited to just that, just a moment. I would also use the comparison of, you can use voice to text. So I can, in my truck, I can say, hey Siri, tell John that I'm heading over to City Hall. And it converts it and sends it. My distraction is not significant. I'm looking at the road. Whereas if I'm holding the phone in my hand, that's against the law is the short answer, Your Worship. And understanding the intent of the law is what's important. If I'm typing on my phone, even if it's in my little mount, and I'm looking at, I'm going, John, I am, and I'm physically using my finger to type, that's distraction. That's against the law. That's an offense. That's a significant ticket. And understanding again, because some people will tell us, well, it's in the mount, I don't have it in my hand. But if the officers, we've seen many times where drivers, their attention is on the phone and they're physically typing, that's against the law. And the defense that it's not in my hand, in my opinion, is not sufficient, because while your head is there, you're not seeing the children crossing the road or playing near the street, or the cyclist, or that motorist ahead of you, and you drive into the back end of them. So does that answer your question, Your Worship? Kind of that intent thing, and then the actual letter of the law?
Unfortunately, it does.
The easiest answer, sir, is pull over. Pull over for the 3 minutes that it's going to take you. The social and the personal impact of an accident or a collision isn't worth it, is my thought.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on past property crime. We'll move into drug crime. So again, I spoke about our community safety unit, so CSU. There's 4 full-time members here, and they work in collaboration with the three teams are kind of paired together. So the team that's in Madoc, the team that's here in Quinte, and then in Picton. And those 3 teams work in partnership. And the reason that's done as a partnership is because drugs and that type of crime doesn't recognize municipal borders. So the people that are bringing these items into this poison into our community are coming from outside our community. And this unit's mandate is to prosecute and prevent that from coming into our community. And they are extremely good at what they do. And the beauty of probably the biggest benefit of our unit is that the drug world, there's always someone bigger. There's always a bigger fish. The person that's selling it here locally gets it from somewhere. Well, that person gets it from somewhere. And a common thing in that world, I've never been part of that world as far as drug investigation, but is to always chase the bigger fish. Our unit is very focused on our community. Our unit keeps generally targeting what is impacting our community here. So I can tell you that those 4 officers that are working in partnership in the Quinte area and up to Madoc and down, they are targeting the people that are bringing poison into our community. They're not looking at what's impacting necessarily in Toronto. They're looking here. Okay, and the change that you see there is almost a 20% increase in their production. And that goes in concert with the work that's being done on the road. The officers, the level, to speak to Your Worship, the point about training, the level of training that the O.P.P provides the frontline officer is second to none, I will tell you, almost in Canada. the professionalism and the capabilities of our officers are amazing at interdicting and identifying indicators of drug trafficking within and bringing that poison into our community. And that increase is also a reflection of the number of traffic stops, because when I looked into why there's a rise there, a lot of them are from simple traffic stops, officers just being alert, trained, and professional and going, that's an indicator you're bringing somebody into my community. And by exercising proper judicial authorities, they're getting in there and arresting and charging these folks for bringing this stuff into our community. So it's that partnership between our drug unit and then also our frontline officers. And that's almost a 20% increase in prosecuting and preventing that stuff from coming in. Is there any questions on drugs?
What you were just indicating, we put cameras on Sydney, at Sydney and 401 just because of that, because the information that the O.P.P gathers from west of us indicates that the first place many of them stop is here at Glen Miller Road. So and that's why we put the cameras up there to start with, and I think we got a grant to do that, so that was great.
Yes, Your Worship. And so a big piece of combating drugs is intelligence-driven. So we call intelligence-led policing. Building that network and understanding the bigger picture is in that CCTV, and those investigative tools that the city's provided us are tremendous, and they certainly do contribute to that increase for sure.
Thank you.
All right, so the next piece speaks to other crime occurrences. So this piece speaks to, so you would see what speaks to federal stats, provincial stats, and driving offenses. So these show trending down. These are offenses that weren't covered previously. So this is your marine, all the acts like your importation acts, those types of things. So that is down. And then the provincial stats, that would not include liquor license. I spoke about the enforcement and how that's trended down. Other types of offenses. That a lot of the when I looked at provincial stats, those charges, what were down were a lot of them were trespass to property and those types of things, right? And a lot of those are usually, from the bit of a trend I saw, is usually officer discretion. A lot of the stuff we've been dealing with an unhoused component. So rather than looking to enforcement, we're looking to education, we're looking to services, we're looking to supports to achieve a better aim than enforcement, because enforcement a lot of times, specific deterrence doesn't meet the goal. So overall, those are trending down, which is good. Then clearance rates is the next page. In looking at the clearance rates, the one that drew my attention was property crime at 20%. I'm still looking into that, and I would, I'll commit on behalf of Inspector Reeve to follow that up with the board. Currently sitting at 20%. Typically, that should be in the area of 25. So I don't have an answer for you on that, but I certainly I will commit to looking into that and reporting back to Inspector Reeve, and I'm sure that she, by the time, a little bit of it, I think, speaks, I have some thoughts on it, but I don't want to speculate, but certainly that is a rate that we look to either examine or specifically improve on. The problem with clearance rates with respect to property is that we could, and where my mind kind of goes sometimes is you could have property crime is so semi-damaging, mischief. It could be spray painting, it could be, damaging property is what it is. We could have one night of, I think to when I worked in the county, mailbox baseball or something, we have somebody go out and do a rash of something. And if we don't address that, that can skew stats. I'm certainly not saying that that's the case here, but I just want to be able to look into that a little bit more. But certainly I recognize that that needs to trend up.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay.
Good.
Just
the next,
one question on the unhoused. It's a larger population, and some of the recent events have been around encampments, not necessarily in Quinte West, but has there been any increased calls for service at the encampment locations within the city?
No, sir. So the council did ask us to look into the one encampment that's close by here, for instance. That was kind of near the end of the summer that was starting to trend. Mm-hmm. Certainly working with community partners, mainly MCERT, locally called Impact.
Yep.
But a lot of the community partners, those folks have been supported and have accepted services. Also working with our detachment mental health officer, He managed to connect 3 of the individuals that were living in that encampment, and they are now living with family in a home, 1 in our community, and 2, he assisted in relocating through financial supports within the community, and now those folks are housed. So that encampment that's close by here is significantly smaller. And the good thing is they're starting to accept services. So there is some light on the horizon.
Yes, it is.
For sure.
Good news.
That's fantastic news. I'm glad that, because it's an issue, and I know in certain cities it gets a larger issue, but it's, how do we handle it? And that's great. Thank you for that, and keep up that good work.
Excellent. Any other questions to that? Okay, so then the second or third last page, so speaks to unfounded. So unfounded is a category of that we report on. Commonly, in my experience, it's oftentimes the measure of that is what we're sent to versus what we see. So we might be sent to something that someone says is a certain type of event, and then when the officer goes there and does a complete and thorough investigation, we determine that it's in fact not what was the perception of it. It's not a criticism. It's just what we were sent to versus what we attended. So that just shows that there's a change in the unfounded category, but it's just we went and did a proper investigation and determined that it was different. If that answers the question, that's the simplest way I could kind of explain it. The next is public complaints. So we received a total of 21 public complaints for the detachment. I'm not a particular fan of this chart. I don't think it speaks to the work that's being done. So within this year also, was it this year, LECA? Was LECA changed? Yes. Okay, so this year, so April this year, the formal civilian overseeing body that's responsible for oversight of policing outside of, so there's kind of 2 agencies that oversee policing within the province. There's the SIU, which looks at criminality, and then it used to be called OIRPD. OIRPD has been rebranded as what's called LECA now, LECA, which is the Law Enforcement Complaint Agency. So they're a civilian oversight body that any member of the public within Ontario can go in and they can voice a concern about anything that's police related. LECA then is the agency that's responsible to determine the level or where it needs to go. Oftentimes with the O.P.P, it is sent to our professional standards unit, which is within our leadership component in our headquarters. That agency then works to find a resolution. And their job is not to make the complaint go away, it's to address the concern, the public concern, whatever's raised. So Quinte West had 21 complaints come through LECA. So part of that is I would attribute to a new process. My experience with the previous agency was that there was, I think the agency, this is a bit of speculation, might be just kind of learning their own process at this point. That is a bit of a high number. But the 21 complaints that were sent to our professional standards were then investigated by O.P.P internally. And I can tell you that not only, but 2 of them were substantiated and the remaining 19 were resolved. And based on my experience, oftentimes public complaints, for the most part, they're very important. I'm a strong believer in oversight. And most times they're resolved through conversation. And a lot of times you sit down with somebody and it's perception and having, because it's an education piece for our officers as well, understanding that person that we serviced, whether they were accused or whether they were a victim of crime or they were a witness, their perception of the event may be different than the officers, and getting the officer and the person that was involved with us to understand each other's perspective and their perception of what occurred oftentimes resolves the issue. And that resolution has to be at the person, I'll call them the complainant for lack of a better term, has to be at the complainant's consent. So we cannot resolve, our professional standards folks will not resolve a complainant informally or through conversation without the consent of the complainant. So at the end of the day, if a process comes from LECA to our professional standards and it's resolved, it has to be to the satisfaction of the complainant with respect to resolving it informally. The other 2 that are substantiated, that was probably, I don't know the specifics of those 2, but that would mean that our professional standards folks identified either a service need or a conduct need or something that needed to be addressed. So it was not resolved informally, or through conversation with the complainant, they identified the need to take some sort of formal steps. So that would have been dealt with through the detachment commander. So really 2 out of 21, that's pretty good.
And it's important that we listen. Very
It's
important.
very important. We need to listen to. Our officers are human beings and we make mistakes, and I am far beyond reproach, nor are the officers. So it's important to always see perspective and learn to get better.
Any questions or comments, anyone? Michael, go ahead.
Would unwarranted skew the numbers at all? Meaning, say someone got a ticket and they just wanted to report it saying, that officer gave me a speeding ticket. So these unwarranted ones, would that add and skew your numbers, or they're dismissed?
No, that would be part of that, what I spoke to at the start, whether they're what we call screened out. So if LECA received that complaint, I don't know, historically those could be screened out. With ORPD, I'd seen those in the past where they were not, because there's a different mechanism to deal with that. But oftentimes with that type of example, we would still want to look at it, because just because we gave a ticket and the person committed an offense, maybe the officer's messaging wasn't appropriate, maybe something else the officer did wasn't appropriate, it still should be reviewed. And one thing that's really impacted our complaint process is our body-worn cameras. Like, absolute gem. And for both sides, because I've found it as an excellent debriefing tool to sit down with an officer and say, how do you think that went? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, okay, now let's, it's like the referees in the game, let's go to the review here. And then when you have an officer sit and watch his or her own body camera, they can sit there and go, oh, yeah, no, I understand now looking at that. And like, a picture's worth 1,000 words. The debriefing that we are able to do now through that technology is amazing. And we're also able to now report back to the public to say, I've actually reviewed the body cam footage, and this is what I see. What are your thoughts? And that's actually resolved a lot of matters. So on both sides of the fence, it's an excellent tool. So, any other questions on public complaints? All right. So then the second last page. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'll pick up the pace here a little bit. Youth charges. So under the new act, we're beginning to track the youth. The only thing I would caution us on that is that these only measure convictions, they don't measure interactions. So the number of youth interactions we have far outweigh fortunately, our actual enforcement. So the O.P.P is just starting to now try and figure out a way to track the interactions we have with our youth. Because right now the only tangible thing we have is the number of times we charge youth, which isn't the proper measure in my opinion. So the only thing I would kind of caution us on is that only reflects actual, you look, it says convictions, 21. Okay, so what? What's the backstory to all that? There's so much more work going on, with Nick and and John does in our community. There's so many other interactions that aren't being captured. So the O.P.P right now is trying to find a tangible way and a measurable way to track those. So this report will continue to develop because it's only being tracked now under the new act. We've only been required to do it. So mental health. I think we only have two left. Oh, I'm sorry, 3 left. So mental health, as I indicated at the start, we have over 600 calls for service last year in dealing with mental health. I would suggest to you that there's a strong proponent of mental health in most calls, or in a large majority of calls that we have. We're very fortunate in Quinte to have the impact program here, and the MCERT or impact. It has a couple different names. They did 619 calls for service last year, and I will tell you that a very, very high, having worked here as a frontline officer, a very high percentage of those calls are supported by professional mental health folks that are supported through Quinte Healthcare and through our partners within the community, and they are worth their weight in gold. What I'll do is just have John just briefly give you some insight into what it looks like next year. If I'm getting tight on time, someone just throw something at me. I just really want to make sure we're giving you a fulsome report. But I just want to get John just to tell you, so every year MCERT is a grant that we have to apply for. This year we struggled with it. It was granted to us in October, late. It's difficult for us to get a person of the level of qualification that we need to properly support our community when we're receiving funding in October and it ends at the fiscal. To promise somebody a 4-month job, that's a difficult sell. But so now John, I just get John to speak to. So we've written to the grant, and he'll speak about what MCERT did and also just to what the grant will look like for next year, because he's the one that wrote it.
So just a little bit of background. We, as a detachment, have a very good partnership with Quinte Healthcare, specifically TMH. We meet with them on a regular basis. Recently, as recent as a couple weeks ago, just to go over a few things. And the subject of impact came up, and its inception happened here locally in 2021, and at the time, we looked at when we would need them on ground, and at the time, we looked at the hours from noon to 10 p.m., because that was basically our peak hours when dealing with people with mental health. Unfortunately, since then, these types of calls have increased, and we've also identified a gap of somewhere between 8 a.m. and noon where we're getting a great deal of calls. So currently we have 2 impact members who are embedded at the detachment. And again, as I mentioned, they are working from noon to 10, and they work alternating weekends. So we have coverage to the weekend as well. And I can't overstate the importance of the program, specifically as a frontline supervisor, the value of it, the support they provide the clients, our officers, and the community as a whole is tremendous. Again, with the gap, the MCERT grant I worked on recently and had it submitted to the city, working closely with Hastings Addictions and Mental Health. They provided me with a lot of information, a lot of the data that we needed to be successful in the grant. And the grant's for an enhancement, and that's to hire an additional person to work with the officers during that gap throughout the day. And again, the gap's created a backlog. So when the impact worker shows up for noon, they may have 2 or 3 referrals sitting on their desk that they couldn't attend with the officers. So it's created a backlog. It's created a delay in services being delivered to the clients. And again, we want to fill that gap. We want to make sure people here in Quinte are supported the way they deserve to be supported.
I mean, I know the other option, I know the grant was late, but the other option is 0.
Absolutely.
So, my point is, whatever we get, use it to the best of our ability and send nothing back other than information.
Absolutely.
Just, I have a question around that. That's great work, because I know the amount of effort that goes into applying and the waiting, and because I've been involved in that in my career forever. But congratulations for moving forward with that. I want to know, we have a community, the city's role now as we have a formal community safety well-being plan, and we're updating that right now. Has I think we've subbed out to Loyalist College students to gather the data. And Christina and I are on it. I think Zach Card is on it.
Oh, Zach.
And we've always wondered, have they consulted you recently with the stakeholders in the community to properly identify the issues? Because they may not have done that, and I want to make sure that they sit down with you guys and say, here's our, we want you to make sure you go to the hospital. We want you to go Partners for Success. We want you to go to our impact team to really identify their inputs so that we can address it formally in the plan, because we're updating the plan right now, and they may not have done that. Because Christina was heavily involved in the first one, but I know she's been away. So it's more of a question, have they? And if they haven't, we'll make sure that you guys identify, because the game plan that I seen, and I think it was October or December, it said they were going to do 4 local focus groups and 13 community agency interviews. So if they haven't consulted you, we need to change that.
So through your worship, I have not, sir, but that doesn't say Inspector Reeve hasn't, because Inspector Reeve is very invested in that program and engaged. So I just wouldn't want, I personally have not, I can't speak on behalf of Inspector Reeve though, so I know that if she's committed to it, I can, her, and I know that's not your criticism or your observation, it's just to make sure that.
I just want to make sure that she has been, so it's a matter of, I'll call her, or you can.
I will speak to her, absolutely.
Yeah, just say, hey, Chuck wants to know that you have been consulted, because our concern, her and I's both, was it's handed over to an applied research group, and I worked at Loyalist, so sometimes the students may not have that information right? They may go by what they know and who to contact versus consulting with you to say, give me a list of names that are really involved in the community and that can give us some real life experiences, but also solutions to incorporate in that community safety well-being plan update. So.
Through your worship. Absolutely, sir. I have committed to, I will reach out to, I was speaking to Inspector Reeve this morning. I will speak with her and confirm. So that's the community safety plan, just that group out of the Loyalists that was doing the research. I was aware of that.
Research, and have they consulted you to identify the focus group members as well as the individuals to be interviewed to collect their data?
Absolutely, sir.
But you guys should be interviewed. I'm just saying, if you haven't been interviewed, then that's, to me, that's as a member of that committee, then I would ask that question to that group and say, okay, we got some work to do here, because you're very topical right now by applying for the grant. So you've actually had to go out and talk to people, calls for service, all of that to get that information for your grant application, my assumption is.
That's correct, and I just want to specify that the grant that the city received recently is separate from the grant enhancement that we've applied for the cycle of 2025 to 2027. The grant application that I completed was for $250,000 to be able to hire some additional staffing.
Good, good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Ted, go ahead.
Maybe a question to get at some of the data that Chuck's talking about, but I just wonder what the work you've done so far, how many repeat people there are, clients that you serve, or how many are repeats versus brand spanking new that have mental health issues?
I would not have that data, sir, but I certainly could get it. So our impact team certainly has a database, and they track the folks that we support and service within our community. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, just to add to that, from what I can say from experience with repeat offenders, or sorry, wrong term, repeat clients, is that in that case, impact will take the lead, which will reduce in calls for service. So they may be repeat in the sense that they reach out to impact, but in a lot of times it'll avoid that person from having to call 911 and avoid police having to get involved. So that's the biggest impact it has.
Your category at the bottom of mental health occurrences is trouble with youth, 1. What was the age category, or what's the age of youth?
I believe, ma'am, I can get back to I don't know, but I would estimate it would be under the age of 18. For different acts, there's different age, like criminal code, there's a certain age, and like different acts categorize youth, the term youth, differently. I suspect it would be under 18, ma'am. But I can certainly get back with the one occurrence. I can certainly get back to you and tell you the details of it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And put it all, any information together and get it to all of us, so that way you don't have to, yeah.
Yes, your worship, I will.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yvonne's our leader in disguise here. She's at the back corner there. She keeps us all on task and keeps us going forward. Thanks, Yvonne.
Yvonne, I asked Yvonne, I said, really, like, how long should I be? She said, like, 20 minutes, Al. I'm like, I can't do anything in 20 minutes if I'm talking. I'm sorry, I'm from the East Coast. So I'm sorry, Yvonne, I lied to you. All right, last two categories. Overdose. So I spoke to that earlier. So we had 3 fatalities. Now, the thing is, this focuses just on opioids as well. The O.P.P, again, under the new act, we're required to capture overdose statistics differently. So in 2024, you'll see that there was opioid overdose was 3 were fatal. We attended a total of 11 events that were strictly categorized just as overdose. Drugs are prolific within many calls that we attend. They're a causation of many calls for service, but specific ones, that just speaks to ones that were just for that. That is a new reporting process. There's a strong, I will tell you this, that there's a very strong partnership with public health here. If there is if there is an indication of something within our community that we need to message, public health is the lead on that. So if there is a particular poison in our community that is having an extremely adverse effect beyond what a normal person that is suffering from that addiction is using it, we are not the agency to message that. So we have a very good partnership with public health, and they take the lead on that. And obviously the other strategies we're using that are working on that is our impact workers are phenomenal. They deal with addictions and mental health. They work closely with addiction and mental health, and also the unhoused, the local unhoused strategy. I will tell you from working in an adjacent detachment, it is the template that people are using. The template that you came up with in concert with the partners in the detachment is working. So those three kind of factors all go together to minimize those. 3 is too many, but that's what's impacting it. Any questions on overdose? Okay, and then on a high note, we'll end on a high note, is victim services. So this person, Jennifer, she works in our detachment. She's embedded within the 4 walls. You pay for her. That is an augmentation. That's something specifically that the city pays for. And I can tell you that she's a very busy lady. The officers reached out to almost 1,500 victims of crime in our community last year. 441 of them were fully engaged and accepted, and Jennifer does all of that. So she serviced over 400 people in our community in services and supports in whatever, and that can range, their scope that they cover is absolutely massive. And that's a 30% increase. So our officers recognize the commitment and the financial commitment the city's made by supporting that service within our community or in our detachment, and we're using it because you can see a steady increase. Every year it's gone up 26, then 27, and this year's 30. So, and that's being closely monitored because we recognize that is a financial commitment by the city and that we're responsible to use it appropriately. And I can tell you that it is being used. 400 people, over 400 people benefited from it. So, Your Worship, that kind of concludes an overview of the report. I apologize for going on so long.
Fine, we charge by the minute, you're okay. Ted, anything on your mind now, or?
Excellent report. That's good.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. Sheila?
I really enjoyed the thorough report, in depth. I do have a question regarding the last page. It says referrals not offered, victim resides outside of Ontario. What would be the next step for that person?
Okay, so victim resides outside Ontario. I can't speak to the specifics of that. I think that just goes to, we wouldn't offer services internally. I will get back to you on that, ma'am, but in speaking and knowing Jennifer, we would be connecting or looking to what we could support them within their own community. So it would be the equivalent of the 211. Remember the 211 when it was around? I would think that Jennifer fills in that 211 gap locally. So she would be connecting that individual externally within their province, I suspect. But I certainly will ask her when I go back and get back to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. 211 is still around, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
211 is an excellent tool.
Yes.
But Jennifer is top
Yes.
shelf, in person, such a nice lady, and so invested and works well beyond her hours and what she's paid for.
Michael?
Thank you.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Shem? Chuck?
Just one thing, I do appreciate your thoroughness of the report. It's a welcome addition, and don't punish yourself for that. Thank you for your input, and that's part of our role, is to really help us understand the challenges and the opportunities that you face. So thank you for that. And don't apologize. You're doing a great job, the whole team.
Thank you. Any additional comments? We don't often get the head cheese here, and we're glad that we're glad you're here. Listen, we're very proud of our detachment, as I hope you realize, and it's any detachment is as good as the people who are in it. So I can tell you, we're proud of the officers, and we're proud of obviously, the depth that we have in that building is phenomenal. The strength, I should say, I guess, maybe.
Absolutely, Your Worship. Thanks for having me here this morning. It is a pleasure to be here. I've been to a couple of events, including the opening of the detachment a couple of years ago. and very aware and very appreciative of the support that the municipality shows to the O.P.P. We recognize what we have here. It is definitely a jewel for the O.P.P. It's not just about Inspector Reeve, who is one of the most respected detachment commanders in the province, but the work that this detachment does with the support of council, the community, and municipal partners makes it enviable for many areas in the province. So we are very proud of our team here as well, just as I know you are, sir. Thank you.
Well, I often stop in and say hello to the officers who happen to be there that day, and sometimes I want to just shut this, so I don't want to have this all out to public. Thank you. Residents of this city that we represent. And I'm very proud, and I stop by to say that. And for no other reason, if I have and I don't get a lot of complaints. I've passed all the complaints I have to Inspector Reeve or Al, and I don't get a lot of complaints. I will soon. The first complaint I'll get come spring and nice weather is everybody's speeding. Doesn't happen in the wintertime, but come spring and people are outside doing things that they haven't been able to do. The cars go by and they're all speeding. But that's not new. Inspector Reeve taught me that a long time ago, that, you know, the weather does play a big part of the issues that people see. But no, I just want to emphasize, and I do let the Premier know as well. Yes, I do, because he really wants to know what's happening and how people are functioning, and he's very supportive of our Ontario Provincial Police, which is great, but he's also very supportive of our detachment. I know that. So, yeah, it's all part and parcel, and as I said, Yvonne's the leader for us. She keeps us all organized and makes sure that we have the meetings that are required and deal with issues that I guess you'd say are provincially mandated that we have to follow. So again, I think I thank you very much, and thank all of you for being here today. We've done well. Had a great report. I appreciate that information, and we get it's all out to the public so they know what's happening, and that's a plus for us as well. So again, I think, Josh, anything else we need? You're good?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would say we can move through the rest of the correspondence here on the agenda if any members of the board have any questions, or if
anything else on the correspondence, I guess.
Your Worship, just not to interrupt, sorry, just one other thing Inspector Reeve asked me to pass on was, and I'll keep it short, I'll provide this to Yvonne. Under the new act, there is a number of timelines that come in concert with the board, and the service needs to, we have to meet certain timelines. The O.P.P has extracted those timelines into a nice handy Excel chart. So I'm going to provide this to Yvonne, okay, and it'll assist the board in just kind of guiding us through the next year. Just as an example, so we have to provide our strategic plan as of May 15th. So I can tell you that on the April 1st meeting, Inspector Reeve's intent is to come to you and ask you know, what kind of things you see the detachment or what you want to see from the detachment that you can incorporate within our strategic plan. But this timeline I'll provide to either Josh or to Yvonne, just to make sure that the board is familiar or sees those timelines.
Yes.
Okay, thank
That's
you, Your
great.
Worship.
Thank you. Anything else? Ted?
I take it we're in the correspondence now, and.
Yes.
Okay, so in the B part of correspondence, the letter from the Deputy Chief Wilkie, President Ontario Chiefs of Police, regarding the $77 million. I know there's budget meetings that has taken place here, and I'm sure you have the answer to this, but in terms of the 77 million, is that a one-shot deal in terms of this year? I see the proposed one-time relief funding, it's called, of 77 million is intended to offset rising costs to police wages in the 4-year contract. So it's a 4-year contract, but is it 77 million for this year only, or is there 77 million for 4 years, or what's the scoop on that? Does anybody have that?
I think you got the answer right there. We're not sure either, but I think it's only one shot. But that's the way I see it, and we're very fortunate. We have a great contract with the O.P.P, and we'll use what we need to which we've done, I think, haven't we, Yvonne? Or you not on the budget end? No, okay. Well, I think we have used it when we did our budget, and yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, if we could get that information, I think it's important, whenever it does come down the pipe, and it's significant dollars. You know.
We'll get what we've got right now. We'll get it out to you, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
But we're in good shape, I can tell you. Good shape. Anything else? Anything we've missed, or anything under new business?
I do have something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to note that there's a new clinic in Quinte West on Thursday, launched at the Belleville and Quinte West CHC from 10 to 2. It's a RAM clinic, which stands for Rapid Access Addiction Medicine. And so there is a nurse on site and an addiction counselor, a doctor, and walk-ins are accepted. Just wanted
Very good, thank you.
to let the public know about that. Thank you.
Great, okay. Anything else?
Your Worship, if we can get a motion to receive all the correspondence on the agenda, that would be great.
Get a
Thank you.
move, Michael and Chuck, moved and seconded by Michael, seconded by Chuck. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Thank you. Carried, okay. Anything else? Anything else you need? Otherwise, we're looking for a miraculous move called adjournment. Okay. You get two? You get two, Josh? You're good?
Got to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you very much, folks, and pleasure to be here, and thanks for all the information, and glad to see our hierarchy doing the job by coming to see what's happening in Quinte West. That's great, and anytime, you're welcome here anytime. We are planning something for Inspector Reeve on the 2nd of May, as you've heard, and we will have it at the marina. It'll be low-key, and yeah, good time. It's a good time for her, not necessarily us, but it's a good time for her, you know, so we can't all be winners when it comes to retirement, you know, but we certainly
from the Ontario Provincial Police and no longer the detachment commander. I think the date is first week of April.
April 30th.
Or April 30th.
Was the last day in the correspondence? I could be wrong.
No, I think you're right, sir. I think it is the end of April. I'm in.